Okay, so before we get to the profiles, if we search and we click on this, we want to have profiles. I want to have an alert context. So basically, right now, if we submit this without anything, we get the default window alert. I don't want that. I want to have just something appear, an alert appear, and then disappear automatically after whatever, 3 seconds. And then anywhere else in the application that we wanted to use an alert, we could use that context. And the main reason I'm doing this is just to show you how we can use multiple contexts. So let's go into our context folder and let's create a new folder called alert. Make sure it's alongside of the GitHub folder, not inside of it. And then let's create alert context.js. And then it's also going to have, alerts will have its own reducer. So let's do alert reducer.js. So we'll start off in the context here. We're going to do a lot of familiar stuff. Let's bring in create context, and let's bring in use reducer from React. Okay, and then we're also going to import the alert reducer, and that's going to be from /alert reducer. Okay, and then let's create our context. So const alert context, and we just want to call create context. And then remember, we need our provider, so we're going to export const alert provider. Okay, and that's going to take in from props, we're going to destructure children. And then let's set our initial state. Now, I'm just going to set the initial state to null by default. And then if we do have an alert, it'll just be an object with a message. And we can have a type as well if we want it to be like an error or success or whatever. So now we need to use our use reducer hook. So let's say const, and remember we get state and our dispatch function from that. So that's from use reducer, and that takes in two things. It takes in the reducer we want to use, in this case alert, and then also the initial state. All right, and then what we want to return from here is going to be alert context dot provider, capital P. Actually, we need our tag here, or angle bracket, whatever. All right, and then in here is going to be the children prop. Okay, and then any values we want to pass are going to get passed in here as an object, and we want to pass in alert, and I'm going to pass in the entire state. Okay, and then let's export default alert context down here. And yeah, so it should be good. Now let's go to app.js, and just like we did with our GitHub provider, we have to wrap everything. So we'll actually just copy this down, and this is going to be our alert provider. And let's change the folder name to alert, and then this is going to be alert context, and we're going to put this right under the GitHub provider. Let's do alert provider, and we're going to close that down here. Okay, so we shouldn't have any errors or anything. Let's open up our dev tools here. It's just telling us dispatch hasn't been used, but let's go to our components, and if we look here, you should see your alert provider, and right now all we have in our state is just that null value. Okay, so we know at least we have our context hooked up. Now let's create in our context a function here to set an alert. So let's say const set alert, and we're going to have two things typed in here or passed in here. We'll have a message and we'll have a type, and then what we want to do is dispatch. So we're going to dispatch to the reducer, and we'll dispatch a type, which is going to be just set underscore alert. And then for the payload will have an object with the message and the type. Now I want this to go away after a few seconds, so after we dispatch, let's do a set timeout, which is just, regular JavaScript. And set timeout takes in a function, and this function I want to dispatch, we're going to go ahead and dispatch an object with the type of remove underscore alert. Okay, so now we're dispatching remove alert, and set timeout takes in a second argument here of the number of milliseconds we want this to fire off at. So let's do 3000. So in 3 seconds, so it'll dispatch set alert, and then in 3 seconds remove alert will be fired off. So now we need to take care of these actual actions in the reducer. So let's save this, and let's go to our alert reducer, and let's create it. So alert reducer takes in state action. Whoops. Okay, and then we're going to have a switch here. We want to evaluate action.type. We're going to have a case for set underscore alert. And for set alert, we just want to return, and we're just going to simply return the entire payload. So action.payload. Right, because that's all, we only have one piece of state, so we're going to return the whole thing, which will be that message and the type. Then for the case of remove alert, for that we're going to want to return null. That's basically the initial state, right? Return that back to null. And then for default, as usual, we're just going to return state. And that's it. So we just need to export. So export default alert reducer. Good. So now this set alert, we should be able to, we can pass that in down here. So set alert. And now we should be able to bring that in whenever we want to call an alert. We can bring that into the component and fire it off. And then whatever we pass in as a message and type will then get put into this this alert state, and we can show it wherever we want. All right, so in the next video, what we'll do is make it so we can fire that off. So instead of this happening, we'll fire off that set alert, and then ultimately we want to have an alert component to display the message. All right, so in the last video, we created our alert context and the reducer. So now let's go into our user search component, because that's where we want to fire this off. So from here in user search, we're bringing in our GitHub context, but we're also going to want to bring in the alert context. So let's copy this down, and let's bring in alert context. And then down here, let's see. So basically, we're going to do the same kind of thing that we did with the GitHub context. We're going to pull out what we need, which in this case is going to be the set alert function. And then we just want to do use context, and we want to use the alert context. Okay, so now we can call this set alert from wherever we want. Where we want to call it is right here. Instead of doing this, just regular, a window alert, let's call set alert, and it takes in a message which will pass in please enter something, and then as a type, let's pass in error. So let's save that, and now let's go ahead and open up our DevTools, and let's see, what's this? Okay, that's fine. Let's go to our components, and I want to go to the alert provider, and we have over here it says null, but if I click go without putting anything in, we see the message and the type. Now it goes away after 3 seconds because that's how I set it up with the set timeout. Because when it displays, I don't want it to just sit there. We want it to go away, right? It's just a notification. So now anywhere that we want to, create an alert with a message and a type, we can simply do what we just did. Just bring in set alert and call it from wherever we want. Now, obviously, just having it in the state doesn't do us much good in the UI. So let's close up user search now that we know that it actually, adds it to the state. And now let's create an alert component. So I'm going to go into components layout and let's create a file here called alert.jsx. Create a component. And let's just output alert for now. And we want to bring this into our app.js. And this is just going to be displayed down here. So let's see, I'll just copy this down and let's bring in layout alert. And then we're just going to put this down here. Let's put it directly in the main tag. We're going to go above the switch with the routes and have alert, and you can see it's displaying right here. Now obviously we don't want to show anything if there's no alert, so we'll have to account for that in the component. But let's go ahead and first of all bring in what we need. We're going to need the context because we need the alert state, right? Because that has the message and the type and all that. So let's bring in use context from React. And then we need to bring in the alert context. Oops, I guess I can't do that. So let's bring that in. That's going to be from // context / alert / context. So let's go right here and let's say const, and we want to get out the alert state. So we want that from, let's say, use context, and then pass in here the alert context. So that'll give us whatever is put in the alert, which is an object that has a message or MSG and a type. Now in the return, let's see, we're going to return, let's get rid of that, and let's say alert. So if alert is not equal to null, then, because remember it's null by default, so if it's not equal to null, then we want to display it. So I'm going to put in a paragraph here. You can copy this from the repository if you want, because I'm going to have an SVG, which you might not want to type out, but let's just add the paragraph here. This is going to be flex. Let's do items or items dash start. Let's do margin bottom 4, and let's do space dash x dash 2. Okay, so we have a paragraph here, and then if it's an error alert, then I want to show the SVG. So I'm going to put some curly braces here and say alert dot type, because remember it has a message and it has a type. So if alert type is equal to error, then I'm going to show an SVG, and I'm actually going to just grab that and paste that in. Okay, so we'll go ahead and paste that in. So it's this right here, this SVG. And then let's go underneath that conditional, and then we want to just have, I'm going to do strong, and we'll add a class. Actually, let's do a paragraph here with a class of flex dash 1. Let's do text dash base, font semi-bold. We'll do leading dash 7, and let's do text dash white. And then inside here we'll put strong tag, and we just want the message, so alert dot, and then I think it's MSG. Okay, so let's just click go here, and there we go. Please enter something, and it disappears after 3 seconds. And yes, you could do this without context. You could simply just bring in the alert component into the the user search and just say whatever. If there's nothing in here, then display the component. But I did want to show you a couple things. I wanted to show you how you could add multiple contexts, because now we have the GitHub context and the alert context. And also, if you wanted to use an alert somewhere else, it would be easier because you could just bring in the set alert function from your context and just call it from there. And it would display wherever you display the alert component, which I just chose to do right here. All right, so that's it for the alert context. Pretty simple. In the next video, I want to start to look at creating the profiles. So right now, if we click here, it goes to user slash and then the username, but right now that doesn't exist. So that's what we'll continue to work or start to work on next. Okay, so now we want to get the specific user data. So if I type in search here and I click on visit profile, and I'm probably going to make this bigger for this because there's quite a bit of data we're going to display. But as you can see here, it goes to user slash and then whatever the login. So I want this to load a user page or a user component, but we're going to put it in pages since it is its own page. So let's say new file, and we'll call this user.jsx. Create a React component here. And for now, I'm just going to output user. And what we want to do is create a route that matches this. Actually, this should be user, not users. So let's fix that link. That's going to be in our, where is it, user item component. So right here, I'm going to change users to just user. So now if I go back here and we click on, actually let's just search again. So if I click on visit profile, it should now go to user slash and then the login. So now let's create a route for that. So we need to go into our app.js, close that up. And in our app.js, let's create a new route. I'm going to put this under the about, so I'll just copy that down. And the component we want to load is user, which we have to bring in from pages, which I can auto import. Okay, so you can see that auto imported. I'm just going to move it up to the rest of the pages. And then for the path, it's going to be the path is going to be slash user slash, and then we're going to do colon and then login. So now if we save that, now we should see, if we go to user slash anything, we should see the user component or the user page. Now there's a few things we need to do in our context. We need to have a function that makes a request to get that specific user. Then in that function, we have to call an action in our reducer to add the new user to the state. So let's go ahead and open up our context, GitHub context, and where we have our initial state up here, let's add to it. So we're going to add user, which is singular, and that's going to be an object. It's going to be an empty object by default. And when we fetch our user, we want to fill that with the specific user. So let's go down, and before I forget, let's add it to our value down here. So we'll say user, and we'll set that to state.user. And now we need to create our function. So I'm just going to copy the search users, and then we'll just, edit it. So let's see, we want to copy this search users. It's going too fast. Okay, so we'll just grab that, and then I'll paste it right underneath. And then let's change this. So this is going to get a single user. Instead of, let's see, search users, let's change it to get, but we're going to change it to get user because it's just getting a single user. And we're going to pass in here the username or the login. And then we're going to set loading to true. That can stay. And then we don't need any params. We'll get rid of that. And the endpoint we want to hit is no longer this. So we can get rid of that. We want to do the GitHub URL slash users and then slash the login. Okay, so that will give us the single user. Now I do want to check to see if it's a 404. So basically if there's something in here that isn't a user and it doesn't match, if it doesn't match anything, then I want to redirect to the not found page. So right here, let's do an if statement, and we can take that response and we can check the status of it. And if that is equal to 404, then we'll just redirect. So I'm just going to do window location, and we'll set that to /not found. And then else is where we want to then get the data. So we can actually let's just bring these two up into the else. And there's no items array. So right here, we're just going to replace this with data. So we're just setting the response to a variable called data. And then we're going to dispatch an action called getUser. So just remove the S from that. And then the payload is going to be data, which is going to be the single user that comes back from that response. All right, so we'll save that. Now let's create this action in our reducer. Okay, so we'll go to our GitHub reducer, and we'll go right under get users, and let's add a case for get_user singular. And then basically we just want to return our current state, and we want to set user. Okay, so make sure it's singular, not users. That's the array of users. We want to set this to action.payload because that's what we sent. We sent it as the payload. And let's set loading to false. Okay, so that will put that single user in the state. So let's save that. Now we obviously want to call this getUser, and where we want to call that is in the user page or the user component. Now we do have to add it down here into our value if we want to access it, so let's add it here as well. Okay, now we'll go into user.jsx, and let's close that up. And from here we're going to want to import useEffect because that's where we want to call the getUser function, and let's also bring in useContext because that's where the getUser function is. So we want to bring those in from React, and then let's also import our GitHub context. And then let's go down here, and we're going to set so what do we actually want to get from the context? We want to get the getUser function. We also want to get the user state. And then we're going to set that to useContext and pass in here the GitHub context. Now we want to run useEffect here, and that's going to take in a function. And make sure you add your second argument of just an empty array, because if you don't do this, it's going to continuously run and it's going to basically crash your browser. So make sure you add this in order for it to only run once. And then we want to run getUser. Now to get the actual login or username to pass in here, we want to get it from here, from the URL. And remember, when we created our route, we called it login, this :login right here. So with React Router, we can get a prop called match, and let's go down here, and on match we can get params, and we want to get the login param. Hey guys, I just wanted to cut in here real quick and show you that this match isn't going to work for React Router version 6. So if you are using 6, what you want to do is bring in something called useParams, a hook called useParams from React Router. So let's say import useParams from React Router DOM, and then we're not going to use match, so we're going to get rid of that prop. And down here we just want to create a variable called params, set that to useParams, and then down here simply get rid of the match. And I know you don't have this get user repos yet, but we're going to do that for both of these. And save that, and then that should work. Okay, so it goes to user / the username, and you haven't got this far yet where you create the actual profiles, but I did want to just mention that match is no longer available with React Router 6. All right, so let's continue on with the video. And we're not going to see anything here, but if we open up our dev tools, our React dev tools, and we go to our GitHub provider, we should see, if we look in here, if we look in our state, you can see the user. There we go. So we're getting all the data. And we have access to that with the user right here. In fact, I can go down here and just put in here, let's do user.login. and you'll see the name. And if I go back home and I search for something else, I don't know, hello, we visit the profile, you should see that username, that login. All right, so now that we know we can get that, in the next video, let's go ahead and display some of that user data. And there's a lot of stuff we can display. We'll have the image, the name, their location, their bio, all that stuff. And we are going to be making it look nice, so we will have quite a few classes to use as well, and some conditionals. So we'll get into creating the user page next. So now we're going to start to work on the user page, the data output. So if I search for Brad and I go to my profile here, right now we're just seeing the login, but we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff here, the image, the location, bio, all that stuff. We're even going to make another request to get the user's repositories. So let's go into our user.jsx, that's in our pages folder, and I'm going to import up here, we're going to bring in some icons from React-icons/FA. And the icons we want, the first one is going to be FA code pen. And then we're going to get FA store. Let's get FA user friends. And then FA users. So those are the 4 icons that I want to get. And then we're going to need link from React Router DOM. So let's import that. Okay, and then we're going to bring in a spinner. We want our spinner component that we created. Actually, let's put that right here. Let's import spinner. And that's going to be from what? We want to go up one level into components. Right? Yeah, so we're in pages. We're going up to components. Then we're going into layout. And then we want our spinner. Okay, and then let's see, in addition to get user and user from our context, we want loading. And then right above this return, let's just check for loading. And if that's true, then we're going to return our spinner. All right, so now we should, yeah, you can see the spinner flashes real quick. Now, all the stuff that we want to display is in this user object right here. And I'm going to destructure and just pull all the stuff that I want to use out of it. So we'll go right above our loading here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this in. And then you guys can copy it. So basically, we're just destructuring from this user object all of this. Okay, because we're going to be using all that stuff. Now, down here in the return, let's go ahead and we're just going to use a fragment here for the main wrapper element. And then in here, we're going to start to create our markup. So first of all, we'll have a div here. Let's do width-full. Let's do MX auto, so margin auto on the left and right. On large screens, we're going to do width-10. It's actually going to be 10/12, but I don't think, yeah, Emmet won't work with that. So we'll do 10, and then we'll do add /12 onto that. So that's basically like, actually this is going to be our wrapper div. Now we're going to have just a go back link to go back to the search page. So let's have, we'll do MB4 here, so margin bottom 4, and then let's add a link. And this is going to go to just /, and I'm going to add a class name onto this of BTN and BTN dash. Let's do BTN-ghost, and then we'll just say back to search. Okay, so now we should have this back to search button. Okay, cool. Now we're going to go outside of this MB4 div. Let's go outside of that, and let's do a class here. This is going to be our grid, and we're going to do grid-calls-1 by default, and then on XL, we're going to do grid-calls-3. Same thing on large, grid-calls-3. Also medium, so MD colon, grid-calls-3. And then we're going to add margin bottom. Let's do MB8. And then let's do on medium screens, we're going to do gap-8. Okay, so I know that's a lot of classes, but we want this to look nice. So in here, we're going to do a custom-card-image. And we're also going to add to this margin bottom 6, although on medium screens, so let's do MD colon, we're going to do margin bottom 0. And then in here, we're going to have our div that wraps around our image. So this is going to be rounded-LG. Let's do shadow-XL, card, and image-full. And then in here, we're going to have a figure tag and then an image tag. And this image source is going to be the avatar URL. So we can go ahead and save that, and we should see the image like this, and it should be faded out because we're going to put the login name on top of it. All right, so let's go outside of the figure, and then we're going to have another class here. This is going to be the card body, and we want to justify, we're going to add the class of justify-end. And let's put an h2 in here, and this h2 we're going to give a class of card-title. And let's also do what else do we want in here? MB, we'll do margin bottom 0. And in the h2 we'll have the name, so we got that from the user object. And then under the h2 we'll do a paragraph with the login. So let's save that, and now you should see the name, and then under it the GitHub username or GitHub login. Now to fix this issue, we have some just a little bit of custom CSS that I'm going to add. So let's go to index CSS, which we haven't touched, but you can put any other global CSS that you want in here. And I'm just going to override custom card image, and then card. I'm going to say card dot and then image dash full, and we're going to add the pseudo selector of before, and we're going to set the border radius to 0.5 rem, and let's set the opacity to 0.45. All right, cool. So that removed the corner issue. So we can close that up, and let's get back to this. So let's see, just trying to figure out where we are here. So this is the main wrapper div. This is the card image. So we're going to go underneath the card image. So this div ends right here. So this is going to have a class of call-span-2. So it's going to span 2 columns of the grid. And let's have another class in here of MB6. And here we'll have an H1. Let's give it a class text-3XL, so we'll make the font really large, and we'll do card-title. And in here we're going to put the name again, and right under the name, still within the H1, we're going to add a div with a class of ML-2, so margin left, MR, margin right, 1. We're going to do badge, class of badge, and then also badge-success. And in here, in that div, we're going to have the type. And then under that div that's wrapping the type, I want to put if they're hireable or not. So hireable is actually a Boolean. So what we'll do is say hireable double ampersand. So if hireable, then let's create a div here. I don't think we can use M. Oh yeah, we can. All right, so let's create a div with the class of MX. We're going to do MX-1 badge-info. And then in here, we're just going to type out hireable. Okay, because this is a Boolean. If it's true, then we're just going to output the word hireable. So as you can see, which I should probably change because I'm not hireable. Then let's go underneath that H1. So the H1 ends right here. And we'll have a paragraph with the bio. Okay, so we should see the bio now. Let's see, underneath that, we're going to have a button to view the GitHub profile, but we're going to put that in a div with margin top 4 to push it down a little bit. and card dash actions. And then let's have an A tag here. So the A tag, since it's an outside link, actually let's add here, it's going to be HTML underscore URL. And since it's an outside link, we're going to add target. We're going to set that to underscore blank. And then we're also going to add the rel attribute, and we're going to set that to no referrer. So no, what is it? No referrer, like that. And that shouldn't give us any warnings here. Let's see. And don't worry about these. They're just variables that we haven't used yet. Anchors must have content. Yeah, so I don't have any content in here, so it's whining. But if you have a target blank, but you don't add this, I'll just show you real quick. If we don't have that, then we're going to get, where is it? Let's see, let's reload this. Right here, using target blank without rel no refer is a security risk, so it's going to complain about that. So make sure you add that. And then let's close this up. And then within the A tag here, we're going to have just visit GitHub profile. But we do want to add some classes as well to style this. All right, so the class we're going to have is btn and then btn dash outline. Okay, cool. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think we're going to stop here. Actually, let's make sure that works. Yeah, so that brings us to the profile. So in the next video, we're going to finish up the standard data. We'll have some stats here. We're going to have the followers, number of repos and all that. And then after that, we'll go ahead and make another request to get the actual repositories and list those out. All right, so we'll finish this up in the next video. Okay, so in the last video, we went ahead and created this output here. We have some other stuff to add. We're going to have like the location, website, and so on, and then some other stats. So let's continue on here. We left off creating the GitHub button, or the go to profile button. Now we're going to go under this second div right here, and let's create a class of width-full, and let's do rounded, let's say rounded LG, shadow MD, BG base-100, and stats. Okay, so in here, first thing we're going to have is the location, which is optional, so we have to do a conditional here. Let's say if location, so if that exists, then let's open up some parentheses, and we're going to have a class name of stat, which is a Daisy UI class, and then in here we'll have stat dash title, and let's do text medium, so text MD. Yeah, that should do it. And that's where we're just going to put the label of location. Okay, and then underneath that div, let's do text-LG, and then we want stat-value. And the value is the location, so we just want curly braces location. And now we should see whatever the user's location is. Now we're going to have two other stats here, which is going to be the website and the Twitter URL. So I'm going to just copy this location. We'll just go ahead and copy that down. And the website is actually called blog. So let's see, blog, because if we look at our response here, you can see right here, blog traversymedia.com. So we do need to add the HTTPS onto that as well. So here we'll check for it, and then the label will just be website. And then let's get rid of that. I do want to have a link to the actual site. So let's add an A tag here. And the href, this is going to be, let's put in some backticks, and we'll do HTTPS and then slash and then blog. Okay, let's also add a target, and let's set that to underscore blank. Oops, forgot my quotes. And then let's also add the rel attribute, and we want to set that equal to no referrer. Okay, and then in here we want to just have the website, which is called blog. Okay, so it should look like that. And then the last one is going to be the Twitter URL. Actually, let's make sure this works. So that should open up in a new tab. Good. Now let's copy this whole conditional down. So we'll copy that down, and then we're going to check. It's called Twitter username. So let's do Twitter underscore username. We're going to check for that, and then let's replace the website label with Twitter. And then for the link here, we're going to go HTTPS, and then it'll be twitter.com/ and then we want the Twitter username. And then down here, let's get rid of that and let's add Twitter username. Good. And that should open it up. Cool. And make sure you follow me on Twitter as well. All right, so now we have that part done. Let's go down here. We want to go, so where the Twitter ends, we want to go just outside of the last div here. Okay, so right here, and let's do width-full, and we'll do PY, so padding on the top and bottom. Let's do 5, and then margin bottom 6, rounded-LG, shadow-MD, BG-base 100, and stats. Okay, and then we're going to add here, we're going to have a class of stat, and in here let's do a class of stat figure, and then we're also going to add a class of text-secondary. And in here is where we're going to have our icon. We're going to have the FA users, so FA users, and we're going to give this a couple classes. So we'll say class name, and let's make it bigger, so we'll do text-3XL, and let's do on medium screens, we'll make it a little bigger, so text-5XL. All right, now we want to go still within the stat, but outside of the stat figure. We'll go underneath that, and this is going to be the stat-title, and let's also do a padding right 5. And then this is going to be the label for followers. So we'll just say followers. And then underneath that, we'll have the stat-value. And these are all Daisy UI classes. These stats. I really like this, the Daisy UI framework, or whatever you want to call it, plugin, I guess. Just extra classes. So stat value, let's do padding. We'll do padding right 5. And text-3XL, and let's do on medium screens, we'll make it a little bigger, so text-4XL. And in here's where we want to put the actual followers. Okay, so we're going to add more of these, so this isn't going to look, this isn't going to be so far apart. Next thing we want is what is the next thing we want? Following. So it's going to be similar to this stat. So this whole div right here, I'm going to just grab that, and I'm going to copy it. We'll paste this in. So the next thing we want is following. So let's change this from followers to following, and we'll change the this right here to following, and the icon as well. Instead of FA users, this is going to be FA user friends. So let's go ahead and save that. Good. So now we have followers, and Jesus, I'm only following 6 people. Huh. All right, so let's go underneath that stat. And this next one is going to be the repos, public repos. So let's change the label here to public repos, and change this to public underscore repos. And then the icon we're going to use here is going to be code pen. Oops, not code pen. We could use code as well. Actually, let's use code. No, we'll use code pen, that's fine. And then we have one more thing we want to add here, and that's going to be the GIS, the public GIS. So let's go underneath this stat, which ends right here. And then let's change this to, let's say public gis. And this is going to be public underscore gis. And then the icon we're going to use here is going to be FA store. All right. So that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing we're going to do is get the user's latest repositories. So we'll get like the latest 5 or 10 repositories and display them here with links to them as well. So we will have to hit another endpoint. In fact, I can show you here if we go to user / and then the username and then repos. That's going to give me an array of all my repositories. Okay, so we'll get to that next. So now we want to get the user repositories and display them down at the bottom. So let's first go into our context, and for the initial state here, I'm going to add on to this repos, which is going to be an array. And let's go down to the very bottom where we have our values, and let's add to this repos and set that to state.repos. And now we need a function to actually get the user repos. So I'm going to copy, I'll copy the search users. And then let's go under the get single user. And let's paste that in, and let's say our get user repos. Okay, so we'll change this function name. Let's call it get user repos, and it's going to take in here. We want to pass in the login or the username, and let's see, we don't need this. And the endpoint that we want to hit is going to be our GitHub URL, and then /users/ and then the login, and then /repos. And let's go down here. We're not getting items, we're just getting the straight data. And then for right here where we dispatch to our reducer, we're going to call this get repos, and we're going to pass along the data as the payload. And then let's make this accessible to components that need it. So we'll pass down here get repos. Wait, get repos is, oh, I called it get user repos. All right, now in our reducer, let's go to our GitHub reducer, and from here we're gonna add a new case for get underscore repos. And what we want to return is our state, and then we're gonna set repos to we're going to set that to the action.payload, and then we also want to set loading to false, and that's it. So now let's go, let's see. So we're going to want to put this on the user page, but I'm going to have a separate component for the repo items. So let's go into, we can close, should be able to close this stuff up. And let's go into components, and inside users, yeah, I guess we could put this in here. I was going to create a, no, we'll create a separate folder for repos, I guess. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, we'll just create a new folder called repos, because we're going to have the repo list and we're going to have the repo item. So let's first create repo list.jsx. Okay, and then for now we'll just output repos. Oops, don't want that. And then what we're going to do is bring this into our user JSX. So let's go way up to the top here, and let's bring in, copy this down and say repo. Actually, no, it's not in layout, it's in repos, and then /repo list. Repo list. Okay, and then we're going to put this down way at the bottom. So let's see, we just want to go right above the last div, the container div here, and we're going to output our repo list. Save that. Okay, so now we have the repo list component showing. Now I'm going to go to my user.jsx, and that's where I'm going to actually call get repos. So right here, get user repos. So we're bringing in from the context. Let's add to this get user repos. And let's also get the repos themselves. Okay, and then we'll go into the use effect here, and let's just copy this down, and let's call get user repos. We'll go ahead and save that, and let's just check our state. Let's go to, what's this, FA code is not defined. We don't need that. And then this React hook use effect dependency thing, I'll get to that after. But I just want to check to see if in our GitHub provider, if we look at our state, yeah, so you can see we're fetching, yeah, we're getting the repos for this user. Good. So let's pass that in now. Since we have access to repos, we're getting that, we're calling the function, getting it from the state, from the context, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to pass repos in as a prop. So now in repo list, let's destructure and say repos, and we'll add our prop types here. Let's go down here, repo list dot prop types, and we have repos, which is an array, so we'll say prop types dot array dot is required. Okay, now we're going to want to loop through, map through, and show these repos, but I am going to add a couple, I'm going to add a couple classes onto this div right here. So let's say class name, and this we're gonna add rounded, let's say rounded LG, and let's do shadow dash LG card and BG dash base dash 100. All right, and then let's just close that up. Inside here, inside this div, we're gonna add a card dash body class. And then inside that, we'll have an H2, and then let's add to this, we'll make it text 3XL. This is just going to say repository. It's just going to be the heading. We'll do MY, so margin top and bottom 4. Let's do font dash bold, card dash title, and in here we'll say repositories, or let's say top repositories. And then underneath that H2 is where we want to add our, create our list. So let's say repos.map, pass in a function here, let's say for each repo. And what we're going to return here, actually we don't need to put a return. We're going to have a repo item, but let's for now just have an H3, and let's say repo dot, I think name should be one of them. Let's see. Yep, so now it's going to show my top repositories. Actually, wait, no, this is just alphabetical, and it shows more than I want. So I think we can add a sort. I think we can add, let's go back to our context and go back to that function. So get user repos, and I'm pretty sure we can add a sort and a per page. So I only want to get like the latest 10. So let's copy up here where we did our search. I'm just gonna grab this because we're gonna add some params. Okay, and then here let's paste that in. So I think we can do sort, and let's sort by I guess we'll do latest instead of top repositories. So I think we can sort by created, and then let's do per page, and set that to 10. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but we'll try it. And then we'll go here and let's just put a question mark and then params. And let's see, created is not defined. That needs to be a string. Okay, so yeah, that did work. Because Node API proxy, that's my latest public repository. All right, cool. Let's see if you can do it by stars, because then it would be top. No, that's not right. That's still latest. We'll just keep it at created, I guess. So we'll change in the repo list here in the heading, let's just say latest repositories. All right, cool. So now that we can get them, we're displaying them. In the next video, we're going to just style these so this looks nicer. All right, so we're just about there, guys. We just need to style these down here, and we want to have a separate component. Right now, it's just an H3. So let's create in components and in repos. Let's create repo item.jsx. And let's create a React functional component. And for now, I'll just say item. And I just want to bring this into my repo list. So let's say import repo item. And then here, when we map through here, we're going to display a repo item. Let's give it a key. So the key, we'll set that to repo.id. All right, so now in repo item, we're going to get from the props repo, and we can add in our prop type. So repo item, prop types, and that's going to be an object, and let's do is required. All right, now I'm going to bring in some icons as well. So I'm just going to paste this in. So we're bringing in FAI, info, link, star, and utensils. And then I'm also going to destructure a bunch of stuff from the repo prop here. So right above the return, I'm just going to add this so we have access to all this data. And then down here, we have, we'll get rid of this. And this wrapping div here, let's add some classes. So we're going to do margin bottom 2, rounded dash medium, card bg dash gray dash 800, and then let's add a hover effect as well. So we can do hover colon bg dash gray dash 900. All right, so that's the wrapping div. Then we'll have the card dash body, then another div with margin bottom 2, text dash XL, and let's do font dash semi-bold. Okay, and then actually, I'm sorry, that's an H3, not a div. So that's going to be an H3, and then we'll have a link inside here that wraps around the name. So let's do an A tag here. Let's do href, and this is going to go to HTML underscore URL, which will bring them to the repo page. Okay, and then in here we'll have our FA link icon, and I'm just going to give this FA link a class name. Let's give it a class of inline because we're displaying it next to the text, and we'll do margin right 1 to just move the text over, and the text is just going to be the name. All right, so we can save that so far, and you can see what we get. All right, so let's go under the H3 here, and I'm going to have a paragraph with the class of margin bottom 3, and this is going to be the description. So paragraph with the description, then we'll have a div, and in here we're going to have basically like the watchers, the stargazers, and so on. So let's do another div in here with the class of mr-2. We're going to do badge, and badge-info and badge-lg. Okay, so this is going to be the watchers. So we're going to have the icon here of FAI, and let's just give this a margin right. So class name, we'll set that to MR-2. And then next to that icon, we're going to have the watchers, watchers count. So let's take a look at that. Good. And then what we'll do is just copy this div. Let's copy this down. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the second one here, let's change the color of the badge from info to success. And this is going to be the stargazers count. Okay, so this will be the stars, and the icon, let's change it to FA star. Okay, and then this third one here, let's do badge error to change the color of the badge. And then this is going to be the open issues. So let's say open_issues. And for the icon, let's do FA info. All right, last one here. Let's change this to warning. Let's change the icon to FA utensils, and this is going to be the forks. All right, save that. Cool. All right, so our application is pretty much done in terms of functionality and what it does, but I want to, in the next section, show you how we can refactor things a little bit, because in React there's so many different ways to do the same thing, and that can be a complaint that a lot of beginners have. So in the next section, instead of creating our functions directly in our context and passing them down through the provider, I want to put them in a separate actions file and call them from the component, and then call our dispatch from the component. And there's a couple reasons for doing this that we'll talk about. One other thing that I want to mention is if we open up our console, you might have noticed this warning here: React hook use effect has missing dependencies, get user repos. So that's talking about the user page or the user component. And the reason it's complaining is because in our use effect, we're calling get user and get user repos, which are functions that were created outside of the use effect. So it's saying, hey, add them here as dependencies like this. Now, you don't want to do this. Don't do this, because if you do, it's going to cause a never-ending loop, and it's going to cause your browser to crash. The reason for that is because since we're passing these functions down through our provider, anytime we update our state, these functions basically get recreated. So what's going to happen is when they get recreated, use effect will fire off because we added them as a dependency, and it's going to get called again. And it's going to do the same thing, and it's just going to keep doing that until your browser crashes. So we don't want to add these as dependencies. And in the next section, we're going to do things in a way where we don't have to. But if you do want to keep it like this and you want to have your functions in the context, there is an easy fix to get rid of this warning, because it's not hurting anything in this case. I mean, if you have a larger application and you're doing it in this way, you might run into some issues, but this is absolutely fine in this case. And to get rid of that warning, you can go right above this line here that has the array of dependencies, and you can put this specific comment to disable the linting. So ESLint disable next line, and then this React hooks exhaustive depths or dependencies. So if I go ahead and save that, and then we come back to this page, that warning isn't going to be there. All right, so like I said, I mean, this is fine for this application. If you want to skip the next section, you don't have to do it, but I think it'll help you not only write the code in a little bit of a better way, but also help you wrap your head around context and reducers and dispatching actions and all that.